The Cantina of Lost Souls. The planet Veridon Prime was a backwater crossroads of the galaxy, a place where humanity's sprawling, post-Earth Confederation blurred messily with the outer reaches of allied alien species. Its primary attraction was the Black Star Cantina, a haven for mercenaries, smugglers, and those who prefer their past to remain uninvestigated. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, grilled krell meat, and desperation. Kalen sat in the darkest corner of the cantina, his back to the wall. It was an old habit, a reflex from a decade of service in the Confederation Marine Corps. He nursed a synthetic ale, the luminescent blue liquid casting faint shadows on his weathered face. At 35, he looked older. His close-cropped dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and his eyes held the thousand-yard stare of a man who had seen too much. A sleek, metallic prosthetic ran from his left elbow to his fingertips, a constant, cold reminder of the Battle of Xerxes' colony, the day he'd earned his discharge, and the medal he kept in a box under his bunk. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was looking for a job, a berth on a ship, anything to get him off this dust ball and away from the memories that clung to him like a second skin. The civilian world, he had learned, was a far more confusing and lonely battlefield than any off-world hellhole he'd ever been sent to. His solitude was shattered by a sudden commotion near the bar. "Get out of here, you scaled freak. We don't serve your kind." The voice was human, loud, and fueled by cheap rock gut. It belonged to a large, red-faced man wearing the patch of a local shipping guild. He was looming over a figure who had been trying to place an order at the bar. The figure was Sarah. She was Voskan, a reptilian humanoid species known for their intellect and reserve. Tall and slender, she was covered in intricate patterns of deep emerald and sapphire scales that shimmered under the cantina's dim lights. Her eyes were large, liquid black, and at that moment, filled with a weary dignity that cut through Kalen's apathy. She wore simple, functional pilot's attire, but her bearing was graceful, almost regal. "I merely wish to purchase a drink and sit quietly," she said, her voice a soft, melodic hum. The universal translator around her neck rendered the sounds perfectly into galactic standard. "I mean no harm." "No harm?" The drunkard sneered, jabbing a thick finger towards her. "Your people are con artists and thieves. My cousin lost his cargo ship trading with one of your kind. You're all the same, cold-blooded and heartless. No one in their right mind would ever marry a scaled thing like you." He looked around at the crowd, encouraging them. "Come on, boys. Who'd marry a lizard?" A few patrons laughed, the ugly, thoughtless laughter of a mob. Others just watched, indifferent. The cantina's droid bartender whirred uselessly, programmed for service, not conflict. Sarah flinched, but she didn't cower. She stood her ground, her black eyes fixed on her accuser, a profound sadness in them. She opened her mouth to speak, perhaps to reason, perhaps to retreat, but the drunkard wasn't finished. "Go on, get out. Crawl back to whatever swamp you hatched from. No one wants you here." The words hung in the air, cruel and final. And then, a sound cut through the noise. The soft, metallic clink of a glass being set down on a wooden table. Kalen rose. He didn't move quickly, but with the deliberate, fluid grace of a predator. Every eye in the cantina seemed to swivel towards him as he crossed the room. The drunkard turned, his bravado faltering for a second as he assessed the newcomer. "This ain't your fight, Spacer," he grumbled. Kalen ignored him completely. He stopped beside Sarah, his gaze finally meeting hers. He saw the fear she was hiding, the strength it was taking for her not to run. He saw a fellow soldier in a different kind of war. Then, he turned to the drunkard. "You're wrong," he said, his voice low and calm. It wasn't the calm of peace, but the calm of a storm at its eye. You're wrong about her, and you're wrong about her people. The drunkard puffed up his chest. Oh yeah? And what would a broken-down vet like you know about it? Kalen's eyes didn't waver. I know that on the night before the Battle of Xerxes' colony, I was lying in the mud, scared out of my mind. My whole unit was. We were pinned down, out of comms, and waiting for an artillery barrage that was going to wipe us off the map. He held up his metal hand. I was still flesh and blood then. A transport pilot named Tvek saved our lives. He was Voskin. The Cantina was silent now. The drunkard's mouth opened and closed. He flew his unarmed shuttle through a wall of anti-aircraft fire. Kalen continued, his voice gaining a quiet power. Not because he was ordered to. He was a civilian contractor. He did it because he heard our distress signal. He landed in the middle of the fire zone, loaded up 12 of my brothers, and took off again. On his third and final trip, a piece of shrapnel tore through his cockpit. Kalen paused, the memory as sharp as the day it happened. He died pulling up, giving us just enough altitude to clear the blast radius. He looked from the drunkard back to Sarah. Her large eyes were wide, unblinking. So you see, Kalen said, his voice now for her alone, when you say no one marries her kind, you're wrong. He took a breath. Because I would be honored to marry someone from a species that produces heroes like Tvek. Someone who shows more dignity and courage in 1 minute than a coward like you will in a lifetime. The silence in the cantina was absolute. The drunkard's face had drained of its red flush, leaving him pale and deflated. He looked around for support and found none. The other patrons were looking at him with contempt. With a final, pathetic grunt, he turned and stumbled out of the bar. Kalen turned back to Sarah. The anger was gone from his eyes, replaced by a quiet respect. I'm sorry you had to deal with that, he said. Are you all right? Sarah stared at him, her breath catching in her throat. She had spent her life facing prejudice, the casual cruelty of those who feared what they didn't understand. She had built walls of intellect and politeness to protect herself. But this man, this scarred human veteran, had just demolished those walls with a story and a simple declaration. Yes, she whispered, her translator struggling to convey the tremor in her voice. Thank you. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Kalen said simply. He gestured to a nearby table. Can I buy you that drink? The wreck of the Starfall. Over the next hour, Kalen and Sarah talked. He learned she was a cartographer, a skilled pilot who spent months alone in her small ship, the Starlight Scribe, charting unstable nebulae and uncharted asteroid fields for the Verdun System's mining guilds. It was solitary, dangerous work, but it paid the bills and kept her away from the kind of stares she'd just endured. She learned he was a man adrift, a warrior who felt useless in a world that no longer needed warriors. His pension was enough to survive, but not enough to live. He had skills, tactical, strategic, protective, that had no market in a cantina on Verdun Prime. I'm heading out tomorrow, Sarah said, finally comfortable enough to let a hint of her natural melodic curiosity into her voice. Into the Verdun Rift. There's a cluster of old, dead mining platforms the guild once mapped for potential salvage. It's a 3-week run. My co-pilot station has been empty since, well, for a while. She hesitated, then met his gaze. It's not a warship. It's cramped, and the life support can be a bit aromatic by the end of the 2nd week. But the view is incredible. Would you like to come? As a temporary partner? Kalen looked at her, at the hope she was trying to hide behind a professional facade. He looked at his metal hand, a tool for war, now being offered a chance to build something else. For the first time in 2 years, the future didn't look like an endless, gray corridor. I'd like that very much, he said. Their journey began. In the confines of the Starlight Scribe, they learned the rhythms of each other's lives. Kalen proved to be a quick study, his tactical mind easily adapting to navigation and systems management. Sarah, in turn, was fascinated by his stories, not of the battles, but of the camaraderie, the loyalty, the small acts of humanity that happened in the shadow of war. He saw the universe through her eyes, not as a series of strategic points to be secured, but as a vast, beautiful, living tapestry. One evening, as they orbited a gas giant with swirling storms of amethyst and gold, Sarah opened up about her past. She spoke of her clan, a prestigious family of scholars and scientists on Voskan. She spoke of her decision to leave, to explore, to be more than just a link in a long chain of tradition. They consider me an eccentric at best, an embarrassment at worst, she said softly, her reflection ghosting over the viewport. I am not fulfilling my duty. I am not continuing the bloodline with a suitable Voskan match. Kalen stood beside her, close enough to feel the faint warmth radiating from her scales. Their loss, he said. The universe is better for having you in it, exploring it. She turned to him, her black eyes searching his. And you? The Confederation gave you a medal and a handshake. Was that enough? He looked at his prosthetic. No, he admitted. It wasn't. I thought my purpose was over. I thought I was just leftover. He looked from his hand to her. I was wrong. My purpose was to be here, with you. The air in the cockpit grew thick, charged with something more powerful than any nebula's radiation. He gently reached out with his human hand, his fingertips tracing the smooth, cool line of her jaw. She leaned into his touch, a soft, rumbling purr emanating from deep within her chest. In that moment, there were no species, no prejudices, no past lives. There were just two lost souls who had found an anchor in each other, the artifact and the empire. Their idyllic journey was shattered on the 12th day. They found the wreckage drifting in the shadow of a dead asteroid. It wasn't one of the old mining platforms. It was a ship, sleek and menacing, its black hull carved with unfamiliar, angular script. It was a scout vessel from the Xylosian Empire. The Xylosians haven't been in this sector for a century, Sarah whispered, her cartographer's mind racing. They're isolationist. Hostile. It's not a derelict, Kalen said, his veteran's instinct screaming. Look at the scorch marks. It was shot down recently. Against his better judgment, they boarded the wreck, looking for a black box or any clue as to why it was there. What they found in the captain's chamber was a small, ornate chest, wrenched open. Inside, nestled on a bed of crushed velvet, was a crystalline sphere. It pulsed with a soft, internal light, and the moment Kalen touched it, he felt a strange hum in his metal hand, a resonance he couldn't explain. It's a Xylosian relic, Sarah breathed, her voice filled with awe. An imperial seerstone. It's said to be attuned to the royal bloodline. Losing it would be a matter of galactic honor. They would do anything to get it back. As if on cue, the Starlight Scribe's proximity alert screamed. 3 massive, crescent-shaped warships dropped out of FTL, filling the view screen. They were Xylosian, and they were scanning. Kalen didn't hesitate. We have to give it back. Now. He ran for the comms, but before he could even send a message, a tractor beam locked onto them. They were pulled, helpless, into the maw of the lead ship. They were separated immediately. Kalen, the human, was thrown into a cell. For hours, he heard nothing. He paced, his mind racing through escape scenarios, each one more hopeless than the last. The thought of Sarah, alone and terrified, was a physical pain in his chest. Finally, The door to his cell hissed open. Two massive, blue-skinned Xylosian guards seized him and dragged him through a labyrinth of corridors. They stopped before a pair of towering obsidian doors, which slid open silently. He was pushed into a vast throne room. The air was cold and still. Rows of Xylosian nobles, their faces hidden behind ornate masks, lined the walls. At the far end, on a dais of black stone, sat the throne. And standing beside it, her posture stiff but unharmed, was Sarah. Before he could call out to her, a figure rose from the throne. It was the Empress. She was ancient, her blue skin weathered like a mountain, her eyes like pools of liquid silver. She held the crystalline sphere in her gnarled hands, and it pulsed in time with her heartbeat. "You are the human who stole my father's star," the Empress said, her voice echoing with the weight of millennia. "A crime punishable by the slow unraveling of your consciousness." "We didn't steal it," Kalen said, his voice clear and steady. "We found it in a wreck, and we're about to return it." "A convenient story," a noble sneered from the crowd. "He is a human, a creature of chaos and greed, and the Voskin girl is his accomplice." Kalen ignored him, his eyes locked on the Empress. "My name is Kalen. I am a soldier, or I was, and Sarah is a cartographer. We are not thieves." The Empress tilted her head, her silver eyes flicking from Kalen to Sarah. "The Vosken claims you are her mate. She claims a bond recognized by the heart, if not by law. Is this true?" Kalen looked at Sarah. He saw the fear in her eyes, but also the fierce hope. She had thrown up the only shield she could think of. In many cultures, a declared mate bond was sacred, even to enemies. He took a deep breath. He could deny it, tell the truth, and probably get them both killed. Or he could protect her, as he had sworn to do the moment he stood up for her in that cantina. "It is true," he said. "Sarah is my mate." A murmur ran through the court. The nobles shifted, their masks betraying nothing but their body language spoke of outrage. A human, mated to a Voskan? It was an abomination to their pure-blooded sensibilities. The Empress raised a hand, silencing them. She descended from the dais, circling Kalen. He felt her gaze boring into him, reading his soul. "A soldier's heart," she murmured. "I see the scars of many battles. I see loyalty. But do you understand the bond you claim?" she asked. "To be the mate of one who carries our royal relic? You claim a place in the dance of stars. You claim a duty to protect not just her, but the legacy she now touches." Kalen didn't flinch. "I don't understand your stars or your legacy, but I understand her." He pointed at Sarah. "I know that she is kind. I know that she is brave. I know that she is the only person in the galaxy who made me feel like I wasn't just a broken-down soldier, but a man. If claiming her as my mate is what protects her, then I will claim it 1,000 times over. And I will protect her with my life. That's what soldiers do." The silence in the throne room was deafening. The Empress stared at him for a long, terrifying moment. Then, something incredible happened. The corner of her ancient, cracked lips twitched. It was the faintest hint of a smile. "You speak not of duty," the Empress said, her voice softer now. "You speak of love, a concept my court has forgotten in its pursuit of power." She turned to Sarah. "Child of the Voskan, you are far from your clan's cold, scholarly nests. You chose the stars. And you chose this man. Why?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "Because when the universe looked at me and saw something to be feared and hated, he looked at me and saw someone worth defending. He gave me back my dignity. He gave me a home. He is my anchor in the storm." The Empress nodded slowly. She looked back at Kalen. You retrieved my father's star. You sought to return it. And you have given this court a lesson in honor it desperately needed. Her gaze swept over the assembled nobles, who seemed to shrink under its weight. Theft of the stone demands a life. But the return of the stone, coupled with the purest declaration of the mate bond this throne has witnessed in a century, demands a reward. She raised the crystalline sphere. Its light flared, bathing the entire room in a warm, golden glow. By the light of the seer stone, I, Empress Velis of the Zylosian Empire, declare your bond recognized and blessed. You are bound, not by our law, but by a truth older than our empire. She turned to her guards. Prepare a shuttle. They are to be escorted safely back to their vessel, with our gratitude and an eternal alliance with the Confederation, brokered by these two. Epilogue: A New Horizon. Back in the cramped cockpit of the Starlight Scribe, Sarah and Kaelin sat in stunned silence as the Zylosian warships receded into the distance. Finally, Sarah let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for hours. You did it, she whispered, turning to him. You saved us. Kaelin shook his head, a slow smile spreading across his face. No. We saved each other. Sarah leaned over and pressed her forehead gently against his, a gesture of deep affection among her people. The faint scent of her, like desert rain after a storm, filled his senses. So, he murmured, his metal hand gently holding hers. Does this mean the temporary position is permanent? Sarah laughed, a beautiful, melodic sound that filled the small ship with joy. The Empress of the Zylosian Empire just blessed our union, Kaelin. I think that makes it a little more than permanent. She turned back to the controls, her black eyes sparkling with a new light. Now where to? The guild can wait. The entire galaxy is open to us. Kaelin looked out at the endless field of stars. For a decade, he had seen them as a battlefield. Now he saw them as a home. Anywhere, he said, his voice filled with a quiet, profound peace. As long as it's with you.